Hi, I'm Madeline, and I'm going to be interviewing my mom today about the 1990s and events that happened in that time.
Hello, I'm Sarah Mead, Madeline's mom, and it's a little humbling to me that the 1990s to you guys were a long time ago. So I'm a little offended by that, but excited to be able to share what I remember.
So, we're going to start with the Gulf War in 1991. So, just tell me about what you remember, who maybe the president was, and just what you remember about that.
So I can tell you what I know now as an adult, but let me start with what I remembered as a 9-year old because I was 9 in 1991. So my uncle, his name is Daryl, your great uncle Daryl. He was in the Air Force Reserve. So what I remember about that time is it was really an anxious time for our family because he was on standby. He was out of Dobbins in one of the units, the Air Force units there, and he had his stuff packed for what felt like a year. It was definitely months, and he was the next one to be called at least one time. Ended up not being deployed, but I remember my mom, my grandmother, all my older relatives being really nervous that my uncle was going to be called. But just a little bit about the Gulf War. So Saddam Hussein led Iraq to invade a country called Kuwait. And basically a whole lot of countries, I don't know, 30, 40 countries joined forces and the U.S. led that effort to invade Iraq, basically to defend Kuwait. But like I said, most of what I remember is through the eyes of a little girl and my family being concerned that my uncle was going to be sent there.
Mm-hmm. And then tell a little bit about the Clinton and his affairs while he was still president and what you remember about that.
Yeah, so by 92, I was a whopping 10 years old. It feels like the Clinton affairs, I think they went on for a lot of the 90s. What I remember most about it is Monica Lewinsky. I think that was the one that was more in the forefront where Clinton denied having an affair with her, and then ended up being very public that he did, and there was definition issues of what an affair was and whether or not it happened, but it did happen in the Oval Office. But it was a really big scandal. I would say things weren't discussed then like they are now. Like it was super taboo topic then. So what, 36 years ago, 35 years ago, you just didn't talk about things like that like is more common now. So it was a big deal.
Okay, and then about the Waco and David Koresh.
Yeah, so I was still an elementary student at that point. I would say most of what I know from that is not from when I was 10, 11 years old, but as an adult. So as I told you earlier, Madeline, so Waco is a city in Texas, and there was a religious cult called the Branch Davidians. And a guy led that group. His name was David Koresh. And basically he had all these wacky ideas. And there were, I don't know, 40, 50 people that ended up following him, including 20, 25 kids. And they had a standoff with the federal government. A lot of things went wrong. I think there's a whole Netflix documentary that's really sad but fascinating about what happened. But there was a month plus long standoff between the federal government and this cult of people. And it was really interesting. Your dad and I went to Texas about 10 years ago, and we saw a sign for this compound, and your dad decided that we wanted to go check it out. It was one of the most eerie things that I've done because it was just this long road and all these abandoned buildings, and they had signs, and it was just kind of gave you chills to think about what happened and how many people lost their life really for nothing, but really sad.
Mm-hmm. All right, and then the O.J. Simpson trial in 1995.
Yeah, so I vividly remember this. I remember, so I was 13, I was a middle schooler. I don't know exactly where I was, but I remember watching the chase. So OJ was chased. You're too young, you probably don't know, but everyone who was alive during that time knows that he was in a white Bronco. And I remember watching him being chased by the police, driving this white Bronco through the streets of California. I remember that pretty vividly. And of course, after that, there was highly televised, publicized case, which he was ultimately acquitted. I think he was charged later, non-criminally, but like a civil suit. But it was just super high profile, the whole O.J. Simpson trial. First of all, do you know who O.J. Simpson is?
I mean, I've heard of him, but I don't really know much about the whole trial and everything.
Do you know what he's famous for?
He played football.
He played football. Yes, that's correct. So yeah, I remember white Bronco, watching the chase. There was a glove, just lots of like buzzwords and things like that. I'm sure there's also some sort of documentary on that if you'd like to catch up.
Mm-hmm. And then also the Olympic bombing that happened in Atlanta, 1996 Olympics. Do you remember about that?
Yeah, I remember. So that was in 96 because the Olympics were in Atlanta. In 96, I was. Do you want to start it over again? Mm-mm. I was a freshman in high school. It was after my freshman high school year. I went with my family. We went to several events in Atlanta. Like, it was such a big deal. We talked about it for years leading up to it. Atlanta was selected. I grew up less than an hour away, so I do remember it vividly. The bombing, again, I learned more of the details as an adult because I was still pretty young then. I do remember everyone was talking about it and scared, but the really sad thing about it is the guy that they originally accused, which was kind of like a squirrely security guard guy that kind of fit the profile of a bomber. He was falsely accused and basically ruined his life. There's also a documentary on that. Are you witnessing a theme? Yeah, they ended up finding someone else, like Rudolph or Randolph or something, that ended up being accused of it. But that was the sad part, is there were like 100 people injured, one person killed, and a guy who was falsely accused.
And the Titanic movie that I believe came out in 1997.
Oh yeah, that one was a big one. Everyone saw it. It was super big deal. The movie star, the famous actor and actress from Titanic. Do you know their names? Do you love it when I ask you questions back?
Leonardo
DiCaprio, which everyone, like, as a teenage girl, everyone thought he was so cute, and posters of him, and Kate Winslet was the actress, super pretty, like redhead. The soundtrack, they had some. Do you want me to sing the songs, or is that too embarrassing in front of your friends at school? But lots of iconic things about that movie. I mean, it's been 30 years, and on our cruise, on the cruise we just went on over spring break, I saw people doing like the iconic hands back pose, which was pretty cool. So it definitely has staying power.
Mm-hmm. And then the Y2K scare of 1999.
Yep. So 1999, the Y2K scare was actually for the year 2000. So there were a lot of people that thought computers would get super confused when it flipped over from 1999 to 2000, thinking it was like 1900 or something. But again, it was a big deal. People talked about it. There was a lot of angst. They thought kind of the world was going to end, and we were so dependent on computers that everything was going to be messed up. I graduated from high school in 2000, so I was a senior in high school that year. But yeah, it was really much ado about nothing. Nothing happened. The world continued on, as you know.
Mm-hmm. And then the last thing, tell a little bit about Napster. I don't even know what that is, but...
What do you think it is?
I have no idea.
Okay. So Napster, interesting. I didn't know it started in 1999, but I think it was pretty short-lived. It got shut down pretty quickly. So I think it was the original file sharing system. So I was a freshman at Clemson, and I'm repping my colors here. I was a freshman at Clemson, and I remember it being really big, and everyone had Napster, and we would share like MP3 files, so like music files. So it was one of the original file shares. Before that, you like got your Walkman out and your Discman and listened to CDs with your headphones. Very, very different times, but it was basically file sharing, and it was quite illegal because you didn't have the copyright, like you didn't pay for it. It was just all kind of like bootleg sharing, but it was the original music file sharing.
Nice.
See, I was on the cutting edge.
Well,